There are moments in your life that divide time into before and after. For me, that moment happened on a Tuesday night in late September in a hotel room that should never have existed. I'm telling this story now because I need someone else to know. I need someone to believe me. And I need to warn anyone who might be tempted, as I was, to save a few dollars by booking that perfect deal that seems too good to be true, because it always is. This happened about 8 months ago. I was traveling for work. I'm a sales representative for a medical equipment company, and my territory covers most of the Southwest. I'd been on the road for 3 days straight, driving from client to client, sleeping in different hotels each night, living out of a suitcase that smelled like stale coffee and highway rest stops. By the third day, I was exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that makes your eyes burn and your thoughts fuzzy, where you catch yourself drifting across lane lines and jerking awake with your heart pounding. I'd planned to make it to Albuquerque that night, where I had a comfortable chain hotel booked and a morning meeting with a hospital procurement officer. But around 7 p.m., somewhere on a lonely stretch of highway between nowhere and nothing, my car started making a sound, a grinding metallic screech that got louder with every mile until I had no choice but to pull into the next town I saw. The town was called Esperanza, population 1,247, according to the faded sign on the highway. It was one of those places that time had forgotten, a single main street with half the storefronts boarded up, a gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1985, and a diner with a flickering neon sign that just read, "Eat." The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if they hadn't made the whole place look like it was already fading into memory. The mechanic at the gas station, an older man with oil-stained hands and a face like weathered leather, told me my transmission was shot. "Could probably get the parts by tomorrow afternoon," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Maybe Thursday morning. No way you're driving this tonight, though, not unless you want to be stranded somewhere worse than here." The way he said "worse than here" stuck with me, like there was something specific he meant, something he wasn't saying. I asked about hotels. He pointed down the main street toward the edge of town where the desert began to reclaim the asphalt. "There's the Desert Rose about 2 miles that way. Only place in town. Can't miss it." I pulled out my phone to book a room, but there was no signal, not even one bar. The mechanic saw me checking and shrugged. "Towers are down. Been that way for 3 days. Phone company keeps saying they'll fix it." So I walked. My suitcase had wheels, but one of them was broken, so it dragged behind me with a rhythmic scraping sound that echoed off the empty buildings. The main street was deserted. No cars, no people, no signs of life except for a dog barking somewhere in the distance and the blue glow of television sets visible through a few windows. The air smelled of dust and creosote, and there was something else underneath, something organic and slightly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. The Desert Rose Motel appeared exactly where the mechanic had said it would, right at the point where the town gave up and let the desert win. It was a long, single-story building, painted a faded pink that might have been cheerful once, but now just looked like sunburned skin. 20 rooms in a row, each with a large window and a door painted turquoise. A neon sign buzzed above the office, missing several letters, so it just read DERTOSE. Only 3 of the rooms had lights on behind their curtains. The parking lot was mostly empty, just an old pickup truck near the office and a sedan that looked like it hadn't moved in years, its tires flat and surrounded by wind-blown trash. My footsteps sounded too loud on the cracked asphalt. Above me, the sky was turning from purple to black, and the stars were starting to appear. More stars than I'd ever seen, so many that they didn't look real. They looked like holes punched in something, like maybe if you looked at them too long, you'd see what was on the other side. The motel office was tiny and cramped, with wood paneling on the walls and a smell that reminded me of my grandmother's attic. Old paper, mothballs, and something musty underneath. Behind the desk sat a woman who might have been 40 or might have been 70. She had the kind of face that was hard to read, with dark eyes that seemed to look through me rather than at me. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she wore a cardigan despite the warmth of the evening. "Need a room?" she asked. Her voice was flat, disinterested. "Yes, please, just for one night. Maybe two, depending on when my car is fixed." She pulled out an actual paper ledger, the kind I hadn't seen since I was a kid. No computer, no credit card machine, just a heavy book with names written in careful handwriting, dates going back months. She ran her finger down the page, then looked up at me. "Room 12, she said. $40 for the night. Cash only." $40 in 2024 for a motel room. I should have questioned it then, should have asked why it was so cheap, why everything was so analog, why the whole situation felt like stepping backward in time. But I was tired, and I was stranded, and $40 was $40. I counted out 2 20s from my wallet. She took them without comment and handed me a key. An actual metal key on a diamond-shaped piece of plastic with 12 printed in faded numbers. Not a key card, not even a key chain, just a key that looked like it had been used thousands of times, the edges worn smooth. "Checkout is at 10 a.m. No visitors, no noise after midnight. Stay in your room after dark." That last part made me pause. Stay in my room after dark? It's already dark. She looked at me then, really looked at me for the first time. "I mean after midnight, after the lights go out. You stay in your room, you keep your door locked, you don't answer if someone knocks. You understand?" I laughed, uncomfortable. "Is this like a safety thing? Is there a problem with crime around here?" She didn't laugh back. "Just follow the rules. They're there for a reason." She turned away then, pulling the ledger closed with a decisive thump. The conversation was clearly over. I stood there for a moment, holding the key, feeling like I should ask more questions, but exhaustion and social awkwardness won out. I just nodded and left. Room 12 was on the far end of the building, past all the other rooms, right where the motel ended and the desert began. The door stuck when I tried to unlock it, and I had to jimmy the key and push hard with my shoulder before it finally gave way with a sound like a sigh. The room was exactly what you'd expect from a $40 motel in the middle of nowhere. A double bed with a floral bedspread that had been washed so many times the colors had faded to ghosts of what they once were. A dresser with a mirror that had black spots spreading like mold across its surface. A small bathroom with rust stains in the sink and a shower head that dripped with metronomic precision. The walls were painted beige, and there were darker rectangles where pictures had once hung. The carpet was brown and industrial, worn down to the backing in spots near the door and the bed. But it was clean. Old, yes, dated, absolutely, but clean. The sheets looked fresh, the towels were folded neatly, and when I ran my finger along the dresser top, it came away without dust. Someone maintained this place, even if that someone seemed to exist in a different decade.
There was no television, I realized, no phone on the nightstand, no alarm clock, just a lamp with a yellowed shade and a Bible in the drawer of the nightstand, bookmarked at Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I laughed at the coincidence, though the sound came out hollow in the empty room. The window looked out on the desert. No curtains, just old-fashioned Venetian blinds that I closed quickly, not liking the way the darkness pressed against the glass. I could see my reflection in the window before the blinds fell, pale, tired, older than I remembered being. Behind my reflection, the room stretched out, and for just a second, I thought I saw someone else standing in the corner. But when I spun around, there was nothing there, just shadows and my suitcase and the empty room. I chalked it up to exhaustion and the weird vibe of the place. I'd sleep, get my car fixed in the morning, and forget this place ever existed. I should have left right then, should have walked back to the mechanic, slept in my car, done anything other than stay. But I didn't. I brushed my teeth, changed into my sleeping clothes, and climbed into bed. The mattress was softer than I expected, and the sheets smelled of lavender and something else, something faint and sweet that I couldn't quite place. I was asleep within minutes. I don't know what time it was when I first woke up. There was no clock, and my phone was dead. The battery had drained completely, even though I'd plugged it in. The charger was still connected, still plugged into the wall, but my phone showed no sign of charging. Just a dead black screen that reflected my face like a dark mirror. The room was absolutely silent. Not the normal silence of a hotel room with distant plumbing and muffled voices and the hum of air conditioning. This was a deeper silence, the kind that presses on your eardrums and makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing. I lay there in the darkness, trying to figure out what had woken me, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving from right to left across my door. They stopped directly in front of my room. I could see the shadow of feet in the gap between the door and the floor, blocking the faint light from outside. Someone was standing there. Just standing. Not knocking, not moving. Just standing.
I held my breath, suddenly remembering the woman's words. You don't answer if someone knocks. But nobody was knocking. They were just standing there. After what felt like hours, but was probably just minutes, the shadow moved on. The footsteps continued, slow and steady, moving toward the end of the building. I heard them pass the last room, and then they kept going, out into the desert, fading into the distance, until there was silence again. I told myself it was another guest, someone who couldn't sleep, taking a walk, perfectly normal. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. Those footsteps had been wrong somehow. The rhythm was off, the weight of them too heavy, and they hadn't stopped at any other doors, just mine. I lay there in the darkness, my eyes adjusting slowly to the lack of light. The room was pitch black, darker than it should have been. The blinds were closed, yes, but there should have been some light seeping in from outside. Street lights, moonlight, something. But there was nothing, just darkness so complete it felt textured, heavy, like I could reach out and touch it. And then I heard something else, something that made every muscle in my body go rigid with fear. Scratching, coming from inside the wall. It started near the headboard, a soft sound like fingernails on drywall. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then it moved, tracking along the wall toward the window. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Not random, deliberate, following a path. The sound circled the entire room, always at the same height, about 6 feet up, right where someone standing might trail their fingers along the wall. When it reached the door, it stopped. Complete silence for maybe 30 seconds. Then 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't make a sound. The knocking came again, 3 times, slow, measured, patient. You don't answer if someone knocks. I pulled the sheets up to my chin like a child hiding from monsters, and I waited. After the 3rd set of knocks, there was silence. Then the scratching started again, moving away from the door, back along the wall, completing its circuit of the room before fading into nothing. I lay there until my eyes burned from staring into the darkness, until my body ached from being held so rigid. Eventually, exhaustion won out over fear, and I fell back asleep. When I woke again, light was seeping around the edges of the blinds. Morning. I'd made it through the night. I sat up, my body stiff and sore, and looked around the room. Everything looked normal, ordinary. The walls were solid and unmarked. The door was still closed and locked. There was no sign that anything unusual had happened. I checked the door, running my hands over the outside to see if there were any scratches or marks. Nothing. The wood was old and worn, but there was nothing fresh, nothing that would indicate someone had been trying to claw their way in. I told myself it had been a dream, stress, exhaustion, sleeping in a strange place, my mind playing tricks. I brushed my teeth, got dressed, and tried my phone again. Still dead, still not charging. I'd have to find someone with a working phone and call my office, explain why I was going to miss my meeting. I opened the door, squinting against the bright morning sun. The desert looked different in daylight, still harsh and endless, but less threatening. The parking lot was empty now. The pickup truck and the sedan were both gone. The motel looked even faded and tired in the harsh light, like a photograph left too long in the sun. I walked to the office to check out and ask about my car. The door was locked. I knocked, waited, knocked again. Nothing. I cupped my hands against the glass and peered inside. The office was empty. The desk was clear. The ledger was gone. It looked like no one had been there in years. Dust on every surface, cobwebs in the corners, the kind of abandonment that takes time to accumulate. But that was impossible. I'd been there just 12 hours ago. The woman had been there. She'd taken my money, given me a key. I tried the door again, rattling the handle, locked tight. I walked around the building, checking windows, looking for any sign of life. All the other room doors were closed, but when I peered through windows, I saw the same thing. Rooms that looked abandoned, furniture covered in dust, that sense of time having stopped. Except for my room, room 12. When I went back and looked through my own window, I could see the rumpled bed, my suitcase, signs of recent occupation. My hands were shaking now. This didn't make sense. None of this made sense. I walked back toward town, moving faster than I intended, nearly running by the time I reached the main street. In the daylight, Esperanza looked even more abandoned than it had the previous evening. Every storefront was closed. The gas station was dark, the pumps covered in plastic bags that said out of service. The diner's neon sign was off, and when I looked through the window, I saw empty tables and chairs stacked in the corner.
The mechanic's garage was locked up tight. My car was still there in the lot, but the office was dark. I pounded on the door, shouting for someone, anyone. My voice echoed off the empty buildings and died in the desert air. That's when I noticed the other cars in the lot, 6 of them, all parked in a neat row behind the building, all with flat tires, all covered in dust and pollen, all looking like they'd been there for months, maybe years. One of them had a bumper sticker that said Carrie Edwards 2004. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Something was very, very wrong with this town, with this whole situation. I started walking, not back toward the motel, but away from it, down the highway in the direction I'd come from. I'd walk to the next town if I had to. I'd flag down a passing car. I'd do anything except stay here another minute. But after walking for what felt like an hour, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I was passing the same landmarks, the same dead tree, twisted and black against the sky, the same mile marker, the same pattern of cracks in the asphalt. I was walking in a circle, somehow ending up back where I started, even though the road was straight and I never turned around. By the time I made it back to Esperanza, the sun was setting again, the same orange and purple light, the same dying day. And I understood, with a certainty that settled in my bones like ice, that I wasn't gonna leave. Not tonight, maybe not ever. The walk back to the Desert Rose felt like a funeral march. My legs moved automatically, carrying me back to room 12, even as my mind screamed at me to go anywhere else. But where? The town was empty, the road led nowhere, and night was coming fast. The motel looked exactly as it had that morning, abandoned and faded. But as I approached, I saw something that stopped me cold. Lights were on behind 3 of the curtained windows, the same 3 windows that had been lit when I'd arrived the day before. And there, in the parking lot, were the pickup truck and the sedan, right where they'd been. The office door was unlocked. Inside, the woman sat behind the desk, the ledger open in front of her. She looked up as I entered, and her expression didn't change. No surprise, no concern, just that same flat, distant gaze. "Back for another night?" she asked. "What is this place?" My voice came out rough, desperate. "What's happening here?" She tilted her head slightly, like she was considering whether to answer. Finally, she said, "You should have stayed in your room after midnight. That's the rule." "I did stay in my room. I didn't leave." "Did you answer when they knocked?" "I hadn't. I'd been too afraid to even move." She nodded slowly. "Then you should be fine. You can leave in the morning." "I tried to leave this morning. The road just leads back here." "It's not morning yet," she said, and I realized she was right. It was sunset again. Somehow I'd lost an entire day, or maybe I'd never had it. Maybe time worked differently here. "What do I owe you?" I asked, my voice hollow. What else could I say? What else could I do? "You already paid. Room 12, same rules apply. Stay in your room after midnight. Keep your door locked. Don't answer if someone knocks." She held out the key, the same key I'd turned in that morning, or thought I had. I took it with trembling hands. "What happens if I break the rules?" I asked. She looked at me then with something that might have been pity. "You join the others. You become part of what walks these halls at night." I wanted to ask more, wanted to demand answers, explanations, a way out. But the way she looked at me, through me, told me there was nothing more to say. So I took the key and walked back to room 12, the desert darkness gathering around me like a shroud. The room was exactly as I'd left it. Bed unmade, suitcase on the floor, my toothbrush still on the bathroom sink. I checked my phone one more time, still dead. I plugged it in anyway, knowing it wouldn't charge, but needing the ritual, the familiar action to anchor me to reality. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for night to fall completely. Through the blinds, I watched the sky turn from purple to black, watched the stars appear one by one until they covered the sky like a disease. And I thought about the woman's words, "You join the others." How many others were there? How many people had made the same mistake I had, booking a cheap room in a forgotten town, getting trapped in whatever this place was? And what did they become when they finally broke the rules or stayed too long? Midnight came with no warning. One moment it was just another hour of darkness, and the next moment everything changed. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly I could see my breath. The walls seemed to contract, pressing in, and the scratching began again. But this time, it wasn't alone. This time I could hear footsteps outside my door, multiple sets of footsteps, moving in different rhythms, different weights. Some sounded heavy and dragging, like bodies being pulled across concrete. Others were quick and light, almost dancing. They moved back and forth outside my door, pacing, circling, waiting. The scratching moved around the room again, but now I could hear it in other walls too, in the room next to mine, in the room on the other side, above me in the ceiling, below me in the floor. All around me, the sound of nails on drywall, clawing, searching, trying to find a way in. Then came the knocking. Not just on my door, but on every door. 3 slow knocks, over and over, moving from room to room in a wave of sound. When the knocking reached my door, I held my breath and closed my eyes. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, patient. I didn't answer, didn't move, didn't breathe. But then I heard something that made my eyes snap open. A voice. Quiet, barely above a whisper, coming from just outside my door. "Please," it said, "please let me in. I'm so cold. I've been walking for so long. Please." It was a woman's voice, young, frightened. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to open the door, to help. But I remembered the rule. Don't answer if someone knocks. "Please," the voice said again, and now it sounded like crying. "I just want to go home. I want to see my family. Please help me, please." My hand was on the doorknob before I realized I'd moved. I was standing, crossing the room, reaching for the lock. The voice sounded so real, so desperate. What if it was real? What if someone really needed help? But then I remembered the others, the cars in the mechanics lot with their flat tires and years of dust, the way the woman had said, "You join the others," and I understood that the voice outside my door had once been a real person, someone who had stayed in this motel, someone who had broken the rules, someone who was now part of whatever walked these halls at night. I pulled my hand back from the door and backed away until I hit the bed. I sat down hard, my whole body shaking. The crying outside my door turned to screaming. Not words anymore, just raw sound, rage and desperation mixed together. The doorknob rattled violently. Something slammed against the door, over and over, hard enough to shake the frame. The scratching in the walls became frantic, furious, and then, as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Complete silence. The temperature returned to normal. The pressure in the room eased. I sat there in the darkness, listening to my own ragged breathing, and waited for dawn.
When light finally crept around the edges of the blinds, I felt like I'd aged years in a single night. My hands were still shaking. My throat was raw, though I didn't remember screaming. I checked my phone. Still dead. I checked the door. Still locked, still solid, still showing no signs of the assault I'd heard. I gathered my things quickly, shoving everything into my suitcase without folding or organizing. I just wanted out. I'd walk all day if I had to. I'd walk until I found a road that didn't lead back to Esperanza. When I opened my door, the morning sun was blindingly bright. The desert stretched out in all directions, empty and endless. The other room doors were all closed. The parking lot was empty again. I walked to the office, not sure what I'd find. The door was unlocked. Inside, the woman sat at her desk, the ledger open. When she looked up at me, there was something different in her expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. "You followed the rules," she said. "Can I leave now?" She nodded slowly. "You can leave. Your car will start. The road will take you where you need to go." "What is this place?" I asked again. She was quiet for a long moment, looking down at the ledger. Her finger traced one of the entries, a name written in faded ink. "This place," she started, then paused. "Some places exist between things, between here and there, between now and then, between life and what comes after. This place is where people get stuck, where they stay too long, ignore the warnings, break the rules, where they become part of the in-between." "Are you stuck too?" I asked. She looked up at me, and for just a second I saw past the flat expression to something underneath, something tired and sad and infinitely old. "I keep the rules. I warn people. Sometimes they listen." She paused. "You listened." "How do I make sure I never come back here?" "You won't. Now that you've left once, this place is closed to you. You can't return even if you wanted to. But you'll remember. You'll always remember." She was right about that. I walked back to the gas station, and my car was there, looking exactly as I'd left it. When I turned the key, it started immediately, the engine purring like nothing had ever been wrong. The mechanic was there too, suddenly, as if he'd been there all along. He didn't seem surprised to see me. "Fixed your transmission," he said, not meeting my eyes. "No charge. You should get going. Long drive ahead of you." I drove. I didn't stop until I was 3 towns over, until I found a place with people and traffic and cell phone signals. I called my office, made up a story about food poisoning. I drove home that same day, doing 12 hours straight rather than stop again. I've never been back to that stretch of highway. I've rerouted my entire sales territory to avoid it. I've even requested a transfer to a different region entirely. Because I know the woman was right. I can't go back. But I also know that the Desert Rose Motel is still there, still waiting for the next desperate traveler who sees that too good to be true price and thinks they're getting a deal.